In today's fight news, we start off with former bantamweight champion Aljamain Funkmaster Sterling as he sits down with Sportsnet's Aaron Bronstetter to discuss his move up to the lightweight division and his upcoming opponent on the stacked UFC 300 card, Calvin Kattar. Ahead of this weekend's UFC Vegas 90 main event, middleweight standout Brendan Allen had this to say about the current champ, Dricus du Plessis, and how he feels he matches up with him stylistically. I think it's an easy night in the office. As far as stylistically on the matchup, he has what everyone else has, a puncher's chance. He beats me nowhere else. While speaking to Submission Radio, former middleweight champion Robert the Reaper Whittaker had this to say in regards to his upcoming opponent, Khamzat Chimaev. I think that's cool, me and him against the world sort of thing. We can take out all the bad guys together. We're going to get in there, we're going to have an honorable fight, we're going to test that metal on each other, and we're both going to come out of this better for it. And then we can just go back to beating the bad guys the way we were. The Reaper also had this to say in regards to getting a title shot if he beats Khamzat. I beat Khamzat, then I get a title shot. There's no other possibilities. I don't think Sean will be rewarded for sitting on the sidelines. At the end of the day, they can do whatever they want. These are all just hypotheticals. I'm going there to fight Khamzat because that's my job. That's what I enjoy doing. While speaking to MMA Fighting, Diego Lima, the coach of former lightweight king Charles Oliveira, said that his fighter would prefer a matchup with superstar Conor McGregor over current champion Islam Makhachev, stating, "If we had the opportunity to fight McGregor at welterweight after this fight, we would fight McGregor." Lima stated, "We'll fight for the belt after that." Recently, while speaking to Damon Martin, former UFC heavyweight Frank Mir says that he feels underpaid once he crunched the numbers and looked at what he made for his UFC 100 matchup against Brock Lesnar. "We still did more buys than Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder did, me and Brock Lesnar. Seeing these guys make $40 million combined, I'm like, wow. Brock obviously made 7 figures off of it. I think he made $2.5 million, but I didn't even make $1 million. Brock himself, a much bigger superstar than Fury or Wilder, how come he wasn't making $20 million? That blows my mind, and I don't understand it." Recently, on an episode of his YouTube channel, former UFC champ Daniel Cormier spoke on the potential matchup between welterweights Colby Covington and Ian Machado Gary. Colby has to fight him. With all the insults, with all the things he said, personally, professionally, now you gotta go and fight him because that's what he's always done. He's gotta step on that battlefield, and he's gotta show that he's willing to stand behind his words. While speaking to MMA Fighting, former flyweight kingpin Davison Figueiredo had this to say about his upcoming opponent for the UFC 300 event, Cody Garbrandt. "We see he's mentally fragile. He doesn't have a good head. We see he hasn't come back after having a few losses, right?" The former bantamweight champion Cody Garbrandt clapped back on an episode of MMA Uncensored, stating, I can't wait to break this dude." Per Europop, newly crowned featherweight champion Ilia Topuria broke down his game plan when he faced former champion Alexander Volkanovski. "We noticed that Volkanovski moves a lot around the octagon, but we also knew that at some point he would stop and exchange with me. We knew this was coming, so we stuck to the long combinations, because once you slip or you block the first 1 or 2 punches, it's a natural instinct to stop and lower your hands. I was waiting for Alex to stop and exchange punches, and I knew that would be the time when the knockout would come." Per Trocacao Franca. Middleweight contender Bruno Silva speaks on his most recent defeat to former middleweight champion Chris Weidman this past weekend at UFC Atlantic City due to an eye poke that stopped the fight and had to go to the judges' scorecards. "The exam showed I lost 30% of my vision in one of the eyes, but the doctor doesn't think it's permanent. He thinks it will come back fast. I'll have to go back there next week for another test." Recently, while speaking on an episode of The Schmo, former light heavyweight champion Yuri Prohaska stated that he hopes to get a title shot after a big win at UFC 300 against Alexander Rakic. I believe after the last fight at UFC 295, after that early end of the fight, if I win next against Rakic, I deserve a title shot. While on an episode of the Good Guy, Bad Guy podcast, former UFC superstar Chael Sonnen had this to say about middleweight prospect Bo Nickel and his position on the UFC 300 card. There is a reason that Bo Nickel is getting the shine at UFC 300. I don't know what it is, but my guess is at some point, he's going to have to play with one of the big names. That big name that's sitting available is going to be Sean Strickland. It looks like the #1 ranked bantamweight in the world, Merab the Machine Dvalishvili, is back to his trolling ways as he recently uploaded another skit to his YouTube channel, trolling the current champion Sean O'Malley, in which O'Malley responded on his X account, "LOLs, I giggled, for real." Now on to the PFL season opener in San Antonio. At women's flyweight, Tayla Santos stops Ilara Joanne in the first round by a rear naked choke. After which, Santos had this to say, "I'd like to fight Dakota Dicheva. She's on a hype train right now." Speaking of Dicheva, she won her matchup as well by a TKO in the first round against Lisa Maldine. After which, she fired back at Santos for her call-out, stating, she got beat by Erin Blanchfield. Both Dicheva and Santos advanced to the next round of the PFL Flyweight 125 playoffs. Ahead of his big title shot at the upcoming UFC 301 event, flyweight standout Steve Erceg spoke on him getting chosen as a number 10 contender over Mohamed Mokaev, stating, "He's very young, and I don't think people would have been super excited about seeing him fight for the title after his last performance. So, I think they, the UFC, were just trying to keep it interesting." Per MMA Uncensored, it looks like the dream team of John Anik, Joe Rogan, and Daniel Cormier will be calling the historic UFC 300 event. And with a couple fight announcements, we have welterweight Rinat Fakhretdinov returning against Nicholas Dalby at the UFC Saudi Arabia event on June 22nd. And at middleweight, Bruno Ferreira will be taking on Dustin Stoltzfus at an event on June 8th. Lastly, we leave you with the upcoming UFC 301 official poster released by the UFC just yesterday.